Welcome back to a little bit of cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host, Cody Depius. That is Sam Douglas. No opening celebration today. Sam, as he is now telling everybody here on the podcast, if you are video streaming on YouTube, you can see his little name in the bottom left-hand corner. Sam is sad, and I think Sam's emotions resonate with a lot of the state of Wisconsin, especially in sports fans, as my name here on the Zoom, if you can see on YouTube, is a tough 2025, because that's kind of what Wisconsin sports fans have had to go through here in the first not even 2 months, not even first month and a half. But with the passing of Bob Uecker and now the trading of Chris Middleton, a top three Milwaukee Buck of all time, he is headed out to Washington along with AJ Johnson, who we just saw have probably the best night of his life so far last week. He has been sent over to Washington, and in exchange, the Bucks receiving Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Baldwin Jr. Kuzma will be on the roster. He will get some playing time for the Bucks, probably quite a bit of playing time for the Bucks. Patrick Baldwin Jr. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But at the top here, Chris Middleton, no longer Milwaukee Buck. This one stings as much as I think any trade can.
Yeah, stings is a good word. Gut punch, Um, 11 years with the team. Cody, dude, this is tough, man. This was like we watched this is Milwaukee changed.
Mm-hmm.
The city. I didn't expect to like actually get emotional about this, but Chris and Giannis changed my city.
Yeah.
They created whole neighborhoods, dude. Chris was such a good thing for Milwaukee for 11 years. He was a second round pick from the Pistons, worked in their G League, and he earned his minutes. He took the open job. Never a lick of trouble off the court. Incredible community giveaways, especially during the 12 days of Christmas every year. And brought us to the promised land. I was trying to think about anything in my life that has happened like this. I was a little bit young when Brett Favre retired. The Rodgers situation felt like it had been brewing for so long. Um, Ryan Braun never brought us a ring. Um, this is different, man. Chris changed. He was the culture. It was Chris and Giannis. He's leaving the Bucks, number two all time in minutes, third all time in points, third all time in assists, seventh all time in rebounds, fifth all time in steals. He's the first G League player to ever make an All-Star game. That was in 2019. Um, he's almost a 50-40-90 guy for his career, the picture of efficiency.
Yeah.
He took Michael Redd's 22. So when you're coming into a team and you're taking Michael Redd's number, Red gave him a good Twitter shout out. He did it with class. He was
Mm-hmm.
an ISO scorer that we felt good about. The Bucks fans, he was almost our nice little secret. Like, oh, you want him taking a fadeaway midi on you? Watch our boy go to work because he will work you. He will get his shot up and he's going to be efficient at it. And he hurt his hamstring. We were up 3-2 on the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's when he went out. And that's why I'm comfortable saying that's why we didn't go back-to-back
Oh,
championships.
yeah. Yep.
He was a staple in Milwaukee, man, and it's really, really sad to see him go. Now, basketball wise, I said it before. If we were able to cash in this Chris Middleton chip for something, if their training staff knows that man's ankles are cooked, his
Yeah.
hamstrings pulling off the bone, they're gonna know Chris better than anybody. And if
Mm-hmm.
this is the last serviceable thing he can do for the Bucks, until I'm proven wrong, in John Horst I trust. Whether it's Kyle Kuzma, if Giannis put a stamp of approval on Kuz, maybe they know something about Kuz that I don't. We have to see it play out. I'm not super excited about Kuz, but maybe Washington was, just a barren wasteland where nobody wanted to put effort in, and there is something to be tapped into because I think if you're an NBA player, you got there somehow. There's got to be some work ethic. There's got to be, a little bit of passion, a little bit of drive. And if anybody can bring that out of somebody, it's Dame and Giannis, and it's the culture in Milwaukee. So
Yeah.
until I see Kuz be terrible, I'm going to assume this is the last thing that Chris, serviced the Bucks for, and in John Horst I trust on this one. But damn, no more Chris Middleton. It just hurts a little.
It's really hard to trust Horst here because this kind of stinks, and I'm not even looking at it so much from the Chris Middleton leaving Milwaukee perspective because I think you're right when you talk about the training staff knowing him better. Physically, what Chris is going to be able to give you the next couple of years probably wasn't worth all that much. It was probably worth shipping him away. I also look at the other part of this piece that Milwaukee shipped away, and AJ Johnson, who is a first round pick and probably the most promising first round pick that Milwaukee has seen for a long time. And yes, they got a lot of negative flack when they first drafted a Johnson, but he was able to give you some good minutes last week in a game where you didn't have any of your starters essentially playing. But he dropped 13 points, shot 50% from beyond the arc, and he looked like a flashy, exciting young player. And when you start to see the flashy, exciting young player, what does Milwaukee do? Let's just ship him away. And they did. And yes, maybe they know more and about Kyle Kuzma than what we do, but he's a good scorer, or he has been. This year, you're seeing some career lows, shooting 28% from three. The numbers just aren't there. And he's coming off a year where he averaged 22 a game just last season. So there are some conspiracy theories saying that Kuz was shooting so bad just because he wanted to get out of Washington, which honestly, fair enough. If that's your way to get out of there and if it actually gets you out of there, good for you. Just he's got to find that stroke again in Milwaukee. He's a 29-year-old player. He's going to help you a little bit on the rebounding front where Milwaukee's been hurting there. He's struggled there this year statistically, but he hasn't had a lot of help inside either. But the rebounding numbers, I think you'll start to see him go up just a little bit here with Kuzma. I'm not super excited about it. What, from a basketball standpoint, I'm more excited about from this trade deadline is Kevin Porter Jr. And there is a lot surrounding this as I see the smirk here on Sam's face. That there's a lot of controversy surrounding Kevin Porter Jr. Many of you probably don't know, but this is a player that kind of stormed onto the league and was an electric scorer. He averaged 15 points per game, 17 points per game, and 19 points per game in his first 3 full seasons in the NBA. And if you look at his basketball reference page, you're like, wow, this guy's on top of the world, which kind of he was. He was seeing an ascending career, was looking to become a superstar. And then you see that he had to take a year off from the NBA, and you start to do a little bit of reading, and if you're deep into the NBA, you know what happened, but sexual assault allegations, he beat up his girlfriend, he pled guilty, and he had to play a year, I believe, over in Greece, and has now been allowed to come back into the NBA, has been playing with the Clippers for the first part of this year, averaging about 9 points per game. So we've seen what this guy can do on the floor, basketball-wise, just seething with offensive talent and athleticism. The off-the-court issues, as bad as they are, is what we're seeing here with Kevin Porter Jr. When you look at a character, that is something, it's just unacceptable. But second chances are always given. That is something that is preached around the Bible, and you're seeing it around all of your professional sports leagues. There have been some athletes that have done some terrible, terrible things. You give them a second chance, and they find a way to clean it up. My perspective here with Kevin Porter Jr., you're taking a flyer on a guy where all that you traded away was Marjon Beauchamp, which if you've been watching the Bucks this year, you know that Marjon Beauchamp was worth literally a bag of chips to these guys. They didn't want to play him a single minute. They wanted to give all the other bench minutes to other players. So Marjon was not going to do anything else for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm looking at Kevin Porter Jr. as a free player where they get the opportunity to see if he can work on himself on and off the court. If he can, there's a lot of talent that can be tapped into. And you brought it up before. The culture in Milwaukee is where you're going to find yourself improve as a person. You have some great leaders on this team in a Damian Lillard, in a Giannis Antetokounmpo, in a Bobby Portis, in a Brook Lopez. Those guys, they are the leaders in the locker room. They are great role models, and they are the perfect people for a Kevin Porter Jr. to be around. And this is the piece that I think I'm most excited about from this whole trade deadline, as sad as the whole Chris Middleton thing was. And they do get a Kuzma back who does have some value. They did end up trading away Patrick Baldwin Jr. just to open up a roster spot. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But Kevin Porter Jr. coming in here, I think Kuzma and Porter can bring some value to this team. And I want the overall outlook here on this Kevin Porter Jr. trade.
Yeah, first thing I have written down about Kevin Porter Jr. is, hey, cheap talent is cheap talent.
Yeah.
And that's the basketball perspective. Like you said, this Bucks team is not founded on, but there's no off the court issues going on here. These guys
Mhm.
are buttoned up professionals, and that starts at the top. And you see it with Giannis, Dame, Brooke. These guys are they're here in the league to make their money to go win basketball games and be professionals.
Mhm.
And Kevin Porter Jr. is absolutely not. He does not fit that mold. He has not shown us anything that he is, somebody quality that you want to be around, that you want in your
Right.
city. The assault charges, there was strangulation in the charges as well. He had felony gun charges that were pressed and then dropped a couple years prior. He's had two major outbursts in locker rooms. The reason that he got traded from the Cavaliers was a quote food throwing tantrum after a game in the locker room.
Yeah.
And so then they shipped him out after that, and then he finds a home in Houston where he's performing really, really well, but not well enough that they'll trade him for a second round draft pick to the Thunder just to get him out of the building where the Thunder drop him immediately. He's had opportunities, he's had three chances. Cheap talent is cheap talent. 19 5-5 at his peak. He's actively under investigation from the NBA.
Yeah.
So, it's I hope I will be an optimist for him. I want to see him turn around. I don't want to give him too much time until I see productive production on the court. I don't think he's worth it until he shows me something like that. But that being said, we're looking for a backup guard, and he absolutely can have an opportunity to earn those minutes. Trading away AJ Johnson was also really sad.
Yeah.
The Thunder game was really cool. I texted you, this is going to be one of my favorite games of the year, even though
I,
we're
wa-
going to get smoked.
I turned it out when he texted me that I had no idea what the starting lineup looked like. So I was like, oh, Bucks might be actually competing with the Thunder. And then I turned it on. And it was the end of the first, and it was 39-22. And I said, interesting is definitely a word to describe this game. But yeah,
All the young kids played, all the young Bucks played. We saw a lot of Tyler Smith, and we were playing against the starters of the Thunder. And watching that game, there was one guy on the court that moved different. You can pick out a unicorn on the court. It was AJ Johnson. This guy glides. He looked like John Wall. He looked like he could move laterally, vertically, drive. He wanted to take it to the cup and be aggressive. I was ready to come on this pod and sing praises about AJ Johnson.
hmm
We're not going to do that because we got rid of him. And we got rid of Patrick Baldwin Jr. This is our chips in for Ryan Rollins. I talked about him about a month ago. I said, keep your eyes peeled.
yeah.
We opened up the roster spot. He's the guy that has taken this backup point guard job. We haven't had a backup point guard in a decade. We've been looking for a backup point guard, somebody that can run the offense. We've tried everybody from George Hill twice, in this
Yeah.
process of trying to find a backup point guard. And it looks like we're committing to Ryan Rollins. He's young enough that we don't need to keep feeding into AJ Johnson and cash that chip in. I don't think this is an opportunity for Kevin Porter Jr. because I think this is an opportunity for Ryan Rollins. I really hope that with this open roster spot, and I'm sure we're going to re-sign Rollins, and he's going to be, getting 15 minutes in our playoff games, and I love that. That's one of the biggest assets from this trade deadline process is that Ryan Rollins, I think, is our eighth man now.
Yeah, and that's an exciting thing for them to be able to commit to a player. I wish they would have just held on to Johnson. Like they just have not committed to a guy like that. But now they are kind of with Rollins, and you have to be excited about that. In other trade news, DeLon Wright traded to the Knicks for Jericho Sims, a backup center, will help you on the rebounding front. I think he's going to be an extra body down there. Someone who New York had a lot of hope for when they first drafted him, but he just hasn't panned out, hasn't been able to be a valuable player on that team. Now with new life in Milwaukee. So as we stated before, Patrick Baldwin Jr., he's going to the Spurs. They traded him and cash to the Spurs. They don't get anything in return. They essentially just, here you go, take the money. We don't want him off the roster. Well, we want him off the roster, so no roster spot. Open roster spot. So now that's going to be for the open buyout market, and we'll see what Milwaukee wants to do with that. Tentatively, do you have any ideas on who they're looking at for this buyout market? Always.
And my computer's
Sam.
being all sorts of goofy right now.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
okay.
clicking on links that um
So Sam is
make it.
getting hacked right now.
Yeah, I
He's
am absolutely getting hacked right now. I don't know what's going on. I'm like opening up Google tabs without even pressing buttons. Um yeah, hey Sims, this is exciting. We've been looking for a backup point guard. We took a flyer on a guy that has had a lot of opportunity. He's a tall guy, 6'10", with a 44.5-inch vertical. That was the third highest in combine history. It's just absolutely nuts. This is somebody who can be an athlete out there for us, soak up 10 minutes a game, take some of that center pressure off of Giannis. We don't want to see a ton of Giannis at the 5 minutes. It looks like we are going to be seeing some of those lineups, which basketball wise, small ball wise, makes sense. Do you want Giannis going through 82 games of the season without a backup center, with him being the backup center? Absolutely not. But if we can have Sims go in there, give another young player a chance. Again, we got younger. I don't think we got better. Just losing Chris Middleton, I don't think we got immediately better, but we
Mhm.
did get younger. We got a little faster. We got a little more athletic. And I'll tell you what, I was talking to Billy about this last night at Who's on Third. If the difference of Chris Middleton to Kyle Kuzma is changing your NBA championship dreams, it ain't gonna happen. It wasn't gonna happen. If you're third man on the roster, Giannis and Damian Lillard are gonna be the two that determine the ceiling of this team.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that are bringing us to the promised land or not. The Kuz trade is going to be fantastic. It's going to fill out a roster spot. But if that's the make or break for this team, then it was never meant to be. Same thing with Sims, same thing with KPJ. I like the team. I like the moves. It got us under the second apron. We didn't get better, but we got athletic. It didn't feel like something that's terrifying for a fan is when you have a GM that just does things to do things. Who's just making moves without a plan, without a project. It doesn't feel like that's what Horst was doing. It doesn't feel like, oh, it's time to get rid of Chris. Now we have to do it for something. It feels like there was intention and some
Mm.
sort of plan behind Horst.
I do have a little bit of pushback there. I don't think Kyle Kuzma was the target. I don't think he was the first one they were looking at on the plan. I bet that it was Zach LaVine. And then right after
Sure.
Zach LaVine was traded, they looked next on the list and they said, "All right, we're fine with Kuzma." I there's just not a world where I can sit here and look at this trade and think that this was the trade of Milwaukee's dreams. Middleton and AJ Johnson for
That's
Kyle
fair.
Kuzma
That's fair.
and Patrick Baldwin, who you're literally just gonna ship away with cash. Like there,
Yeah.
I don't think this is the initial plan. I think that one felt a little bit forced. The KPJ one, it sits weird, especially with the stuff still being under investigation. That's how you trade a Marjan Beauchamp. You don't put that much investment. If KPJ, like, he is walking on thin ice. If there is anything, Milwaukee is just going to say you're done, and he's probably going to go play in Europe for the rest of his career. Like, he is on his last legs. Milwaukee's just giving him that last chance and putting him around good guys. Like, if
Yeah.
he's only 24 years old too. Like, I don't know. I'm a lot different now at 23, 24 than I was at 19 and 20 years old too. I can say that very confidently. People, they can change with a little bit of age, and I'm not condoning at all what Porter has done. That is evil. Like, just bottom line evil stuff. But there is forgiveness, and Milwaukee's offering him an opportunity to get better. Sims, young, athletic. I love to see that move. That's good as well. DeLon Wright was not going to do anything here in Milwaukee either. And now you have an open roster spot for the buyout market. So we'll see what Milwaukee
That's
does with this. And
It'll be Ryan Rollins. They'll sign him. He's been on a two-way contract all year. He
okay.
hasn't even been on the roster. So that was the point of moving
Ah,
Baldwin for cash, is to put us at 14 on the roster so that Ryan Rollins can sign a contract. He's been on a two-way.
oh, okay. Thank you.
So
I
this
like
whole
that. That
process,
is news to me. So
this whole
there's your
process
plan.
has been for Ryan Rollins.
Okay. Well, they have the confidence in him, and I'm excited to see how he can develop here as point guard number 2 in Milwaukee. The Bucks will take on the Hawks tonight, and they'll be at home against Philly on Sunday. Hopefully, 2 Philly losses on Sunday. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know who I'm rooting for in the Super Bowl. I'll just say that, ahead of time, it's not going to affect my life. I'm not going to be happy or sad regardless. I mean, good football does make me happy in that sense, but whoever wins, let's just have a good game. I hope everyone has fun, right? But we'll switch gears here. The Wisconsin Badgers, a solid win over Indiana, 76-64 on Tuesday. They'll take on Iowa tomorrow, about to start that really tough Big Ten schedule. There's a lot of positive Greg Gard talk coming right now. It's like, how much does your Greg Gard stock like rise or fall over the course of this regular season, or are you just waiting for that first week of the tournament?
I've been riding with Greg Gard for a while. He caught a lot of heat early in his tenure, but this team has been overperforming, and if they start faltering now, I think we got to keep that in mind that we were not supposed to be a top 25 team all year. That's not what this team was built to be. So when the criticism for Greg Gard is coming in, I do want to make sure that I was singing his praises when they were playing well, because the criticism will come. They sure might be on the verge of a 3-14 upset this year. We'll see. They got to string together some wins, but
Yeah.
hey, playing good in the Big Ten, that's super important. It doesn't matter what the end of the season outlook is. These are your rivals. These are the guys you see every single year. You want to take out Iowa. You want to take out Indiana. These are big games coming up.
Yes, yes, they are. You got Purdue coming up. Just you get a week rest before you take on Purdue, but Purdue ranked seventh in the nation. That's going to be as big as it gets, and it'll be at Purdue as well. Got some Packer news coming in this week. Some good news and some interesting news. We'll start it off with the good news, as Sterling Sharp is headed to the Hall of Fame. Everybody loves to see it. I like to think that Wisconsin sports fans really bullied the NFL into just letting Sterling Sharp in, because I truly think that he deserved it because of the peak that he had in his career. The only reason that Sterling Sharp was not already in Canton, as I believe his career was done in 93 or 94, like when Favre was first getting there, that was towards the end of Sharp's
Mhm.
career, which Sharp should have been that guy for Brett Favre. You probably would have saw a couple more rings if Sharp would have been able to stay healthy, but that wasn't the case. And that's the case as to why Sharp wasn't already in Canton. So another Hall of Famer for the Green Bay Packers in Sterling Sharp.
I love it. Great move. And I'll jump the gun a little bit. This is my piece of what's Gouda for the week. Is Sterling Sharp making the Hall of Fame? I rewatched Shannon's Hall of Fame speech.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've seen it. Awesome speech. One of the better Hall of Fame speeches out there. It's one of those that when he steps up to the microphone, he's talking from the heart and from the soul. These are the first pair of brothers in the Hall of Fame. I'm very happy Eli Manning was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's not what I'm talking about right now. Shannon tells a story. He goes to his grandma Mary Porter, who raised the family. There were a lot of them living in one small house. And he said, "Grandma, I got money now. I can buy you a car. I can buy you jewelry. What can I get for you?" She says, "I want a decent house." He says, "What does a decent house mean?" She says, "A roof that doesn't leak." This is the house that they grew up in. They had 10 kids with grandma and grandpa raising them, and all she wanted was a roof that wouldn't leak. She didn't want to wake up wet anymore. These are two brothers that come from humble roots, and Sterling did everything possible. The guy was talented as all heck, gosh dang, it's good to see him get some flowers. He absolutely deserved it. He put everything out there. He was a role model, a leader. Nobody said a bad word about him off the
Yep.
field. Everybody in Wisconsin that has gotten to know him has been singing for this, yelling for this for two, almost 3 decades now.
Yeah.
So it is about time Sterling Sharp is wearing a gold jacket, and I can't wait for that speech. That's gonna be a tearjerker too.
Yes, it will be. And the one thing I take from that Shannon Hall of Fame speech was him saying, "You see me standing here today. I'm the second best football player in my family." Like he
Yeah.
had to bring up his brother and how Sterling was the father figure for him growing up in that house. How he was always just a natural born leader and someone who'd been given a lot of natural gifts. The way paved the way for both him and his brother to go make it to the league, and now they're going to both be in Canton. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, and just you got to love it. That's what's Gouda. Also, my winner of the week, I will say, is Sterling Sharp. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
Getting that gold jacket. I also, side note here, I like your Eli Manning comments. I do I will say this. I'll preface. I think there's a spot in for Eli Manning again. Being a two-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, I think that should get you in anyway. I don't care. Like the rest of the numbers, how he was over the course of his career, two rings, and the fact that he was part of history twice, taking down
Mm.
the evil empire and the Tom Brady Patriots, the numbers are bad. Don't get me wrong. You look at Eli Manning's football card, nothing pops off the page for you. He was an average quarterback, maybe even below average for a good number of seasons. But two rings at the pinnacle here of NFL history. The helmet catch, I think that just one play really adds to his legacy. So I'll say there is a spot, but yes, I am also glad that he is not first ballot.
He'll make it. I'll be sad when he does. I never bought in. I thought it was a bunch of malarkey, the Eli Manning hype. He had two good runs. Outside of the two runs to the Super Bowl, he never won a playoff game, played 16 seasons. He missed the playoffs 10 of those seasons. At no point in his career was he ever a top five quarterback in the league. I bet for 2 years he was a top 10 quarterback in the league. Like
Yeah.
he was not even a Philip Rivers at his peak. He'll make it. You get two Super Bowl MVPs, and you're marked in history with what you did it. I think he'll make it. I'll be sad when it does. I'm glad it's not a first ballot.
Yeah. All right. We can agree on that as well. We'll stay here with some Packer news, get right back on track. This train, I don't know, it always finds a way back to the track. But Josh Jacobs, with some comments this week, being interviewed, he said that he think Green Bay would benefit from having a true number one wide receiver. He also stated that he loves the guys already in the locker room, but there has been some pushback with the guys that are in the locker room. The first, Dontavion Wicks, this tweet has not been deleted. You can actually go back and look and see it. It was 4 laughing emojis and a thumb down emoji in response to the quote, I think we need a guy that's proven to be a number one wide receiver already. And then I will double that with what Jaden Reed tweeted, and then very shortly after deleted, he said, a lot of y'all Packer fans, so F you, man, bash your own players. Another word for poop. It's crazy, is what he said. And then he deleted it. So some negative feelings from other players. Jordan Love was talking to the media earlier today. He said, I think the room's good already, but I don't think that there's any problem with adding another great player to an already great offense. Then you get to see how good your team can really be. So Jacobs making a comment I don't think anybody listening to this podcast disagrees with, but you're seeing some disagreement maybe in that Packers wide receiver room.
I've made my point on this, and I do stand firm on it. I think with the roster construction that we have, we'd be more beneficial selling off one of the guys and, just making Jaden Reed the number one. I think the talent is there. Get rid of Dobbs or Watson or something like that, and just commit to somebody getting those targets so that Kraft can get his, Reed can get his, and Jacobs can get his. I think we have the pieces. That being said, we know Devontae is playing around Green Bay right now. He put a picture out with his green and gold cleats. Josh Jacobs has made it clear he wants some of his old buddies, some of the Raiders guys, whether it was Max Crosby or Devontae, to come on over. Nobody in this state is saying no to Devontae right now. If Devontae is out here walking around and you want to send him, and Josh Jacobs wants to send him a message on the podcast saying, hey, bro, I will ruffle some feathers for you. I will go out here and I will put myself on the line for you. So come here, teach these kids that there are levels to this, and be the professional, be the all-star, Pro Bowl, all pro receiver that you are. Teach these kids what work really looks like. And I like, you know where I stand on it. I think we should put money towards the defense, and that's my personal beliefs. But if Devontae's showing up, ain't nobody mad at that, man. It'll be a bummer to see Dobbs get a couple less targets a game. It'll be a bummer to see Reed, a little bit mad next year. It's gonna be great seeing Devontae catch some balls from Jordan Love, though.
Where I have problems with this, which I agree with you wholeheartedly on the fact where if Devontae wants to come in, open arms, absolutely. Get Devontae Adams here if he wants to be here. when you look at a Devontae Adams, who I'll say it right now, also a future Hall of Famer. Look at that
Yeah.
football card as well. He will have a gold jacket in Canton. You
First
look
ballot.
at a Devontae Adams, yes, first ballot. You look at Adams, and then you look at even Jaden Reed. Nobody can tell me that they are the same echelon of a wide receiver. That they just aren't. Jaden Reed is seething with talent. I think that there is a 1,200 yard, 1,300 yard receiver in there. He dropped a lot of passes last year. He was in the top 5 in drops, along with, I believe, Watson and Dontavion Wicks, who had the audacity to say something on Twitter as well. I think all of this is just. I'd rather a player work to be quiet. I don't think Josh Jacobs said anything wrong because you look at nobody had over 1,000 yards last year. Your leading targets was Dontavion Wicks, who led the league in drops and only had 39 catches. He had one of the worst receiving percentages in the league last year. You can't tell me that they had a number one receiver or number one receiver production last year. The argument against that is just silly. And if you are offended about it, Wicks or Reed, good. Like we want to see you guys go out there and be that guy. We think that you can, and where the frustration comes in for fans is because we didn't see you live up to the potential that we thought, and we know that they have, and that's where a lot of this is frustrating. Yes, I think it's kind of a fan's job to be able to talk crap about their favorite NFL players when they stink. And this year, for that receiver room as a whole, there was a whole lot of stink when that was not what we were expecting. We were thinking that there were going to be 3 guys, maybe even 4, that all have number one talent, and they're going to give you really solid production. That wasn't the case. The offense did not run well. And no, Jordan Love is not perfect in any of this either. He had a sophomore slump. You can put him at the forefront of the offensive problems from last year. Yes, he needs to get better. But I think it's also silly to think that this offense does not need a number one target. I think it'll make everybody else better too. I truly do. I think a lot of these guys, and this is a point brought up earlier on ESPN Lacrosse this week, they would benefit from a leader like a Devontae Adams. Like, not saying that these kids don't work hard, because they do, but Devontae is an artist that every second that man is awake, he is doing something to get better, to make his routes better, to make his hands better. The kid that we saw get into Green Bay became 40 times the football player when he got out of Green Bay. He is one of the hardest workers of any wide receiver of all time. So to have a guy like him come into that room that has that much talent with it, around a bunch of guys who haven't seen that old tattered veteran who has been there, done that, and is still working harder than all these kids around here, I think that could be a benefit to everybody. So any pushback against it, I don't want to hear it. I think Green Bay's in a good spot.
You told me you really think he's coming to Green Bay. You think if you were a betting man, you'd think he's coming. What makes you say that?
He's wearing the green and gold shoes. They're not stylish. They're not cool. He posted them on his Instagram. And just what he's been able to say on podcasts, and the fact that Jacobs has said, "Yeah, I've been talking to Devontae." There's a connection there. And LaFleur and Gutekunst, they would just be silly to not think that guy in that locker room with those guys would just not make this team so much better. Like, that offense, you could see a switch that is flipped. There is a piece missing there. I don't think it was the line. It definitely wasn't the running back. It wasn't the tight end. I think your wide receivers are there. Well, I don't think your wide receivers are there in entirety, and I think your quarterback had a lot to be desired last year too. Devontae solves 2 of the problems that we're looking at in that Green Bay offense. Gives you the leadership and gives you dependability. A guy who doesn't miss games. A guy who shows up to practice every single week. Just a true, proven leader who I still think has a lot of gas left in the tank. Even when he got to New York, man, those last couple weeks that he had with Rodgers slinging him the rock, he still looked like he was that guy. I think he's got it there. I think he's worth taking a flyer because of the trust that you have in a guy who's one of the best receivers to walk in Green Bay. And that is a pretty high praise. He's going to have his name in that Ring of Honor.
He's got a game that
Continue.
He's got a game that doesn't age either. He's not a
Yeah.
blazing speed guy. If he loses half a step, he will be elite for another 4 years.
Yeah, I think so too. And those hands aren't going anywhere. And those hands, man, they're beautiful, beautiful hands. Got to see him
Pause.
back in Green Bay. No, all the signs are just pointing to it. It'd be a perfect marriage once again. Devontae, we miss you, and I think he's missed us too. I think he's actually said that. Like there's no reason for him to not come back to Green Bay, and that's coming from both parties. It is Super Bowl weekend. The big game's on Sunday. I kind of said before, I don't have a lot of rooting interest in this. It's not going to change my life either way, whoever wins. I'm expecting good football. I think that's what's going to happen, and I will say I'm excited for that. Sam, what are you most hoping for this Super Bowl Sunday?
Man, I want to see the Chiefs run it, dude. I want to see them dominate. I'm here for greatness. I don't have a big horse in the race. I want to see Mahomes throw for 300. I want to see Jalen Hurts cough up the ball because he's a bad quarterback. I like when bad quarterbacks get called out. I love when Russell Westbrook turns it over and bricks threes. I love when the guys that fumble go fumble. And I love when the guys that are supposed to go do it and be great, go be great. I want to see Juju Smith catch 7 for 85. Like, I want to see the random guys. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to enjoy the Chiefs while we got them.
All right, Juju Smith-Schuster betters. You got to have a smile on your face now. Juju Smith-Schuster, anytime touchdown. I don't know what that line is, but there's got to be a pretty good payout on that. Yeah, I mean, I think Saquon is going to be able to do enough where Jalen Hurts doesn't need to be a good quarterback, and I think that's why Philly is where it is this year. I think that's why Nick Sirianni hasn't been fired, because I remember those conversations from the first couple of weeks. Like, those were going on. People were not on the Nick Sirianni train. But Saquon, he's patched up a lot of those holes. That offensive line might be one of the best that I think I've ever seen, and that's a scary sight to see. But if anybody can stop it, it's Big Red, Steve Spags, Kels, Mahomes. It's just legendary. This is going to be a really good culmination for this year in football. These are the best two teams. I think it's going to be a close game. I think we might see overtime again. I have that feeling. I think this is going to be that good of a game. I think we've seen a lot of good football recently, and it would be awful to not see that culminate in just a down to the last drive, who's got the ball in their hands last kind of football game. So I gave my winner of the week earlier. My what's Gouda is Johnny Davis. He is out of Washington. He is traded from the Washington Wizards to the Memphis Grizzlies. Any way you can find your way out of Washington, I'm sorry, Chris Middleton, is a good thing. That place is a dumpster fire, and now Johnny Davis can maybe see that career blossom into something.
It's exciting opportunity for him. Local kid from lacrosse. Yeah, his name was up at the Taco Bell. Congrats, Johnny Davis, on getting
That's right.
drafted. He was on third a couple last summer. Really cool. Rooting for him. Hope he gets some minutes in
He
Memphis.
likes his karaoke rap. He participated. I was
He
there
did.
that night.
Sure did. Sure did. My winner of the week, Cody, it's Super Bowl weekend. We were talking to NBA all week. Adam Silver won this week. It is Super Bowl week, and we're talking about Luka Doncic. A NBA executive says, if I was offered Luka, I would have two questions. Who did he kill, and how easy is it to cover it up? That's the absurdity that we saw this week with the NBA. Adam Silver won the week. That's all I got to say.
That he did. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.